Hey, this is Matt with Alpha Analyst, and in this video, we're going to go over a basic introduction to formulas in Microsoft Excel. So you don't have to be like this guy over here. You don't have to be Einstein to be able to understand how to do formulas in Excel. In reality, they're very simple to start understanding. It is true that you can get into some very, very complex formulas, but we're not going to get into that today. Today, we're just going to cover the very basics. Okay, so let's get started. When you're typing in formulas, you want to make sure that you start with the equal sign as you're typing in your formula. And let's talk about why. So if I type in 1 plus 1, you'll see that when I hit enter, nothing happens. And that's because Microsoft Excel needs us to put an equal sign at the beginning. Otherwise, it won't know that we're trying to use a formula. So let's take that same type of data down here and let's just put an equal sign in front of it. When I hit enter, you'll see that it says 2. So now Microsoft Excel knows that we're trying to do a formula. Here are the keys that we use to say if we're doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So for addition, 1 plus 1, you use the plus sign. For subtraction, if you want to do, let's say 4 minus 3, you do the minus sign. If you want to do, let's say 4 times 4, you use the asterisk key. So 4 times 4 would be 16. And then the division key, so if you want to do equals 12 divided by 4, you use the division key there, and you'll see that the answer is 3. So these are the basic operators that we'll use to perform our calculations in Excel. And while we're talking about some basic operators, I wanted to just touch on these two things. Typically, you don't need to use these very often at all, but I wanted to just mention it so that you're aware of it. Let's say that you wanted to do 2 squared. So let's say 2 to the second power. You would do equals 2 to the second power. If you wanted to do 2 to the third power, you would do 2 to the third power, and that's how you would get to the number that you want. So the caret key, this one right here, the one that shows up above the 6 key on the keyboard, that's how you do exponents. And also I want to point out that if you put an apostrophe before any formula, Microsoft Excel will not calculate the formula. So let's say that I was trying to just do a demonstration and I was trying to say equals 1 plus 1, and I was trying to simply have that show up as text. If you put an apostrophe at the very beginning, it keeps the formula from taking place. So if you do ever want to just display formulas to kind of show your work, to show people what you're doing, it is possible to do that, but I would say that I wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the basics, let's start getting into some formulas that are pretty commonly used. So one formula that's pretty commonly used is the sum formula. So this right here is the sum formula. It basically adds up those two numbers, the 4 plus the 8, which gives us 12. So there are other alternatives to using the sum function. We could say equals 4 plus 8. And you can see that we get to the same answer as if we use the sum function. However, if we do have a large data set, sometimes we can save time with the sum function. So let's type in the sum function right now. Here's how we do it. We type in equals, and you'll notice as I start typing the function, you'll see that there's basically an autocomplete function down here. So Excel is trying to figure out what I'm typing in, and it's supposed to make it easier to type in the formula that you're trying to type in. So we're going to highlight the numbers that we want. So we want the 4 and the 8. So we can highlight the 4 and the 8, close the parentheses, and hit enter. Another option is to do equals sum, and you can click on the first one, and then click on the comma key, and then click on the second one. So why would you want to do that? Why would you want to be able to use the comma key as compared to doing them together? Let's say that instead of adding up the 4 and the 8, let's say that we instead wanted to add up the 8 and the 5. So we could do equals sum. We want to include the 8, and then comma, and then 5, and then end parentheses. And that way we can add up those two numbers. So if you click on that formula that we just did, the sum formula, you'll see that it says equals sum of C22. So it's column C, row 22. So it says add up the value in C22, which is 8, and also the value D21, column D, row 21, that's 5. So 8 plus 5 is equal to 13. So you'll notice that when I double click in this formula, it highlights the cells that are part of this formula. So because this cell C22 is part of the formula, you'll see it show up down here. And here's a cool thing that we can do as we're editing formulas. If we instead meant to include the 4 as compared to the 8, we can simply click on that and we can drag it around. So we could drag that to the 4, and now it says add up those two numbers. Or we can drag this down and it can add up those two numbers. So now it's doing C22 and D22. So those are different things that we can do as we're using the sum formula. Okay, over here we have the count formula. And this is the last formula that we're going to go over. As I mentioned, we're just going to cover the basics today, nothing too complicated. So with the count formula, it basically is taking into account how many numbers we have. So not the actual sum, but 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 numbers there. So if we do a count, if we do equals count, we can highlight these numbers here, and then when we hit enter, you'll see it says 4. So that basically means that there are 4 numbers total here. If we added a 5th number there, we can drag it over. So as we talked about before, if you double click on a formula, it basically shows which cells are part of the formula. So over here for count, you'll see that it highlights only that section right there. So if we want that to include this other section over here, if we want it to include the 3, we can simply put our cursor over here, and if you look closely, you'll see some arrows. They're arrows that are black, and they're basically in a diagonal type of shape. So when you see these arrows here, you can drag over, and now it's basically saying count the range B27 to F27. So once we have that there, we can hit enter, and now you'll see that there's a total count of 5 separate numbers here. So that's how we can use the sum function and the count function, but there are also many other functions available. If you come up here to the Formulas tab, you'll see that there are a wide variety of options for us to choose from. On the Formulas tab, you can find ideas for different types of functions that are available. For example, if you come to the recently used function option up here, you can see functions that were used recently. If you're trying to do financial functions, you can choose from the list of options here. And overall, this is a great way to see which functions are available. One of the more useful ones is this one that says insert function. You can also find that over here on the formula bar. So this right here is the formula bar, and if you have a particular cell that you have highlighted, for example, this cell right here, cell C13, it's highlighted and it has 1 plus 1 is equal to obviously 2. So this right here is the formula bar, and this is where you can make adjustments to the formula. So if you come over here to the left of that, there's an option that says insert function. So if you click on that, this box pops up. So let's say that you were trying to add some stuff up. Let's say that you did not know what to do for adding things. You can type in add, and you'll see that sum pops up as an option. Let's say you wanted to do count. You can search, and count showed up as an option. Let's say you wanted to calculate interest. So this is a formula that you could use for interest. So this is a great way to find formulas that you're looking for. And overall, I would say that Microsoft Excel does give you lots of different ways to pull in formulas. I don't personally use this section up here very much on the Formulas tab, but you can go through and look at different types of formulas that are available for different sections. But I would say this is something that isn't really necessary, and it's possible to come up here and get some ideas for which formulas to use, but I personally don't use that all that much. This section of the Formulas toolbar, it's a little bit more advanced, so I wouldn't recommend worrying too much about it. So to recap, we talked about basic formula elements such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We talked about a couple of formula examples, including sum and count. And we also briefly touched on the insert function option up here, which can help you find a formula in case you're not sure which formula to use for a particular activity. So I hope you found this video to be useful, and thank you for watching.